welcome back to this week's Table Talk. We are excited this week because we've got Tommy Scott, sophomore, West Forsyth High School.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome to the table, Tommy.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and so one of the connections you're here is because we also have Pastor Brian Edmonds, youth pastor, with a message yesterday. So appreciate that, Brian.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, and Brian said, hey, I want to bring Tommy to the table. So that's where we are. So we're going to get right into the questions, and we're just going to talk about them and share some hopeful insight and just our thoughts that are helpful to our viewers. But number one, from Dan. So Dan had this comment about your example of the marathon, which was awesome. We could see that's a whole other episode, but that was awesome. But about the beautiful feet, that imagery of carrying the good news, and just wanted to sort of further explain that, or can you re-explain that in the way that you did relative to Paul, going back to the Old Testament, and what is that whole? Why would the feet be beautiful anyway? That's kind of an odd thing, right?
Yeah. So maybe my understanding of that passage would be that in the biblical days, messengers typically would have had to travel long distances, had nasty feet, dirty feet even, as a result of their travels. Maybe the majority of the time they either walked, ran, or took horseback or donkey or something like that in order to get to where they were going to carry the good news. And so even though they might have been dirty, smelled, or whatever, their feet were still beautiful in the eyes of the beholder because of the message in which they carried. And whether it was traveling to share the good news about a victorious battle, or sharing the good news of Jesus Christ, Paul's referring to these beautiful feet, but Isaiah is actually the one that first coined that from what we read throughout the scripture.
That's right.
Paul quoted in Isaiah chapter 52, verses 7 through 8, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace, and who brings good news of happiness, who publishes salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. And I think Isaiah depicts this watchman out on the city gate, so I went back and reread that after yesterday's sermon. And if you were to back up into verse 6, it even is talking more about this message that the carrier has. And it depicts this watchman on a city gate who sees a messenger coming their way, and then the people shout or they sing for joy because of the reception of this good news. And it kind of reminded me of maybe even Matthew 21, where the crowds went before Jesus and were shouting out, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. I was just thinking about like the shouting, the proclaiming of the arrival of the Messiah. And that's certainly what Isaiah and the prophets would have been pointing to, was a coming Messiah. That was kind of my understanding.
It's almost like how beautiful the donkey, right?
Yeah.
That's carried him in.
And for me, like how beautiful the feet kind of makes me think of like when Jesus has his feet anointed by the lady that he forgives, just like feet they weren't beautiful back then. They had like gross shoes and stuff. But, like they were beautiful in God's eyes, because it carried us to share his message, or like, and it still does. But like she was willing to like go on maybe his gross feet, but like she was doing it for God, and that's just like kind of we can carry that into today.
Yeah, no, that's a good thought. I was thinking about like, have you ever been waiting? I don't know, like mom or dad to come pick you up or whatever, and you don't really see them first, or you see whatever the van. You probably have a van. You guys, you're a family of like 8 or 12, right, or something. So so it's like, oh, how beautiful that van, right? It's coming. The Pony
Picking
Express
up after a long day of school, it's like, yes, finally.
I see that van. How beautiful! That's awesome, van. And I'll just say before the second question, one of the things we talked about in small group. For the equipping class yesterday that I think makes this passage beautiful is that he does quote from Isaiah, how beautiful the feet. Now Isaiah is foretelling of the good news that the people of Israel were now being released from captivity in Babylon. He says how one day when you see these people running through and saying, hey, we've been delivered, we're out of exile now, how beautiful that news is. Yeah. But also in Nahum, minor prophet, between Micah and Habakkuk, Nahum 1:15, Nahum has the same prophecy for their release from Assyria. So he says the same thing about how beautiful the feet of those who carry the good news, that the Lord has delivered us, saved us from captivity. And so now Paul takes this same thing and says, hey, you're in sin, you're in captivity. Gentiles, you didn't even have a chance. How beautiful the feet. And so, does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
like it's not maybe like physical captivity, but it's like the spiritual captivity of our sin because
Yes.
and then once we accept it, it's like just the spiritual freedom, and then we are able to go out. And
That's a beautiful,
Great
yeah.
word.
From Babylon, you're free, God saved you. From Assyria, you're free, God saved you. From sin,
Yeah.
eternal condemnation,
Yeah.
God saved you. And he just moves it forward. So it's just a beautiful letter, man.
It's awesome.
It's a good
Yeah.
letter. So, all right, so Dan, that's great. Good, thank you
Thanks,
for
Dan.
that. And then the second question today we got is from a youth, from Connor. You know Connor?
Oh yeah, Connor. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out Connor.
Yeah, shout out Connor Jones. Yeah, what's up, man?
Okay. So his question was really about, should we try to talk to those who we see are struggling, even if we don't really talk to them that much and we aren't really friends? Tommy, I'll just share with you.
Yeah, I have that happened yesterday for me. So me and Connor, after first service, we were waiting to go out to Biscuitville and like hang out with people and just, kind of have fellowship. And we were saying like we want, because Brian in his message, he said, pray for your one this week. And like that you can have the opportunity to share with someone the good news and like maybe further someone's relationship or help someone begin their relationship with God. And so we were praying for that. And then last night I was texting one of my friends from West and he was saying, he's wanting to come to church, and I've been talking to him about that for the past couple of days.
Yeah.
So I was texting about that, and he was like, "There's a whole bunch of stuff I got to figure out before I go to church." And he was like, "Cause I just gotta figure out what I'm all thinking." I was like, "The way you do that is going to Christ, and like it is through Him, and he just doesn't understand that yet." But he also was saying he wants to have his faith now in his relationship with God now because he doesn't want to be like 30 years old and God not accept him. And I was able to tell him that like you'll never be not accepted by God. And he was like, wait, really? Like he was surprised by it. So it's nice to be able to share that good news and just that like reassurance. And like I could tell he was like in shock because of that.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. So I'm gonna have to
awesome,
continue with
Tommy.
that, and that's gonna be cool. I'm looking forward to that.
And what great advice too. I mean, praying for the opportunity is like, it makes you more intentional too, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of watching for it. And
Yeah.
That's great. Brian, would you add anything to that? Or?
The only thing I came across a quote, I was debating whether or not to put it in my sermon or not, but I would add that as it relates to trying to talk to those that we maybe aren't really close to or anything like that, John Wesley said, preach the law until others are convicted, and then preach God's grace until they are converted. So sometimes even if it's somebody that we don't really know that well, like there's this important mandate. Like, I mean, as I talked in the sermon about, there's 5.5 billion people who are out there who don't yet know the Lord. And
That's crazy.
my approach is try to welcome them into my circle and share the gospel with them in a friendly way. But sometimes God will put people in our lives that we don't necessarily have that opportunity to, to welcome into our home or to begin a conversation with or a friendship with. And I think it's important to share the gospel with everyone. There were no clauses in the Great Commission.
Yeah. And just that part of it is that it's a relational process, right? I mean, we very rarely just show up at someone's door. Very rarely, the God can use that, but just say, "Hey, let me share with this," and they say, "Great, I'm convinced." But it's usually over time, and so it is sort of that. How do we relate? And then also, the example I always use, maybe to Connor's question, is in Scripture. We see Jesus send out. We see the apostles sent out. We see the missionaries sent out in twos, in threes, in 12s, in 70. And so have someone that that can pray with you, can share with you, can come around someone as well to develop that relationship. You don't have to do it alone, right?
Yeah, and in this case, I have one of my friends, Bailey. She's also she's going to start helping with that. And like he was talking to her about that too. And then I just feel like when we're sent, we kind of forget to like consider like school or like just other stuff as it's a mission field, because I feel like a lot of the times we only consider missions as like going to Asia or Africa, somewhere like that's unreached, and and that just like really struggles with that, and like we can have like a huge impact like on our school, because I know God's already used me like several times and like in my class or like just and like with that kid I'm talking about, like I've had many moments like that where I was like, thank you for that opportunity, God. Like it's really nice to be able to have that, and it's reassuring.
That's great, Tommy. That's that's that prayer. Yesterday as well, Lindy Atinella had shared with us Psalm 5:3, and I just real quick want to. It gets exactly at what you're saying and what really the prayer each morning says, "O Lord, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I prepare sacrifice for you and watch and wait." It's almost like each morning when our feet hit the floor, you hear my voice. Give me an opportunity today, and I'm just going to be ready and wait for that.
Yeah, and we gotta be willing to we gotta be willing to maybe step out of our comfort zone too, because it's not gonna be like if someone come up to you and be like, "Hey, can you tell me about Jesus?" Sometimes you gotta seek it out a little bit, and it might be like that. It might be super direct, but you gotta make sure you keep your eyes open for it and be willing.
Fantastic.
Good work.
Fantastic.
Proud of you all too for doing that. Sharing your faith.
Thank you.
No matter where you are.
Yeah. That's great. And so it's a good word, and it also leads us to, we called it speed round last week, but we're going to call it the final word this week. The final word, kind of like this 10 words or less. What impressed upon you? What did the Lord impress upon you out of this text, out of the sermon, out of the study guide that you would want to take with you in the week?
I think for me, it's just kind of in a simple phrase, like I was telling you at the beginning. It's like, for me, it's sent by God for God. So that kind of stuck with me. Like, we're sent by God to declare the good news and share His goodness with others and just help them form a relationship with God.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
Good final word. Good. Pastor Brian.
I think it just goes back to the 5.5 billion people that don't yet know Jesus and who are not yet believers, and God has sent us to tell and proclaim to them the good news of Jesus Christ in whatever way we possibly can. And that's not always going, as Tommy said, to the furthest ends of the earth. Sometimes it's just living missionally right where you are.
Yeah. All right. Well, and so for my final word, let's go to the word Romans 10:20. I have been found by those who did not seek me. I have shown myself to those who did not ask for me. There are no lost causes.
Yeah.
So God's still working even when we think, no, they're probably not really looking for God.
Yeah.
He's been found. And He will show His mercy and grace to those that don't even know it yet.
Yeah.
So, well, great. Hey, man, good to have you with us, Tommy.
It's good to be here. It's awesome.
Get you back to the table sometime.
Yeah. I'd like to do that, yeah.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you all for joining in at the table. We look forward to getting back with you next Tuesday. Blessings, friends.